All right, we're going to hop into it. I still have indigestion. It's still coming up.
That's not how you want to start a podcast off.
I know, but maybe we just get real here. I don't know what you say. It's like old age or something. It's like, where's my Tums? So the big question is this. How are leaders like you that recognize people and technology are the backbone of the company they're building continue to make progress when they have no clear idea on how to develop individuals and utilize technology in a way that helps them remain profitable? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. This is Tom and Michaela, and welcome to the Heart and Hustle Podcast. Questions that I've received, it's hard, you mentioned this a few episodes ago, maybe 5 or 6, maybe 10, maybe last week too, but it's really hard to talk about things like in your walk of life, what you do every day. Yeah. For fear or for, the thought process of somebody thinking that you're talking about them, and which you typically aren't. It's just good topics for conversation, but it's really difficult to have those conversations.
Yeah, there's this whole confidentiality thing that...
Why care about the fine line, though? I mean, people can... I think people can think what they want to think, but it's not necessarily what you mean or what you intend. Intent is 99% of it.
Unfortunately, it's not.
It is.
Unfortunately, it's not.
So these questions came in, and they kind of play on a little bit that's been happening in our world too. And I'm tempted to kind of talk about them tonight, but I'm also tempted not to really bring them up either. So we got to kind of be careful with how we tread.
Maybe we should have talked about this before we started the podcast.
We probably should have, but the Blacklist kind of had us going again.
The Blacklist.
Yeah. Season 7, episode 11 in the books.
Yeah.
So it's getting weird, isn't it?
It's always been weird, but it keeps getting weirder.
So first question that was out there is, and I kind of want to volley this back and forth, kind of get your idea, my idea, maybe just kind of recap, maybe just go through a couple of them tonight. But question comes in is, how does one stay self-disciplined?
How does one stay self-disciplined?
Yeah, so
I'm not the best person to talk to about that.
Well, I don't think I am either, but, what do you do to kind of stay on track during the daytime, to stay self-disciplined amongst what you do? I mean, over the past several months, probably 6 to 8 months, you've gotten progressively busier and busier and busier. Not to say that you were never not busy. You were always extremely busy. But just when you thought it was too much, that you were overloaded, looking back 6 months ago, you weren't overloaded. Now you look at it now and you think, wow, I'm overloaded. But in 6 months from now, you'll look back and say, maybe not so bad.
Right. Busyness is always a matter of perspective.
It is. But how do you stay self-disciplined in kind of your walk of, every day, what you have to do?
Lately it's been a matter of, I know what I need to do and I just do it. I just plow through. I just do it regardless of how I feel about it, regardless of what I want to do, regardless of anything else that's going on. I just do as much as I can, as fast as I can, as good as I can. And I don't know, it's also a little bit of the commitment to my clients and my reputation, and I'm going to do what I said I was going to do, and I'm going to hold to that.
Is it more about being self-disciplined in the mere sense of focusing on your day, meaning that you have, say 10 to 12 hours a day to get work done, maybe 16. Don't quite make it past 16 hours a day at this point, but that you have so much to do, so you want to fit it in on those days? Or is it more of you have so many tasks that you have to complete before that deadline, and you chop up those tasks accordingly to make sure that you meet those deadlines? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
See, for me, it's not about being self-disciplined during the daytime or during what I would consider working hours, because at the end of the day, if I don't feel like giving it my all to a certain project that I'm working on, and I know I'm not going to be doing my best at it, I simply won't do it. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not going to ever miss a deadline, but that deadline for me maybe gets super compressed, where I may have say a 3-week run on knowing, I have to start at some point in time to finish in 3 weeks from now. But there's days where I just don't feel like I'm going to be giving it my all. So it's like, I'm not even going to work on that. And even though I have to have updates, I have to get stuff done, there may be times where it should take me, I would say a solid, 27 hours to complete a project. And I may have 3 entire weeks to get that 27 hours done. But sometimes it's at the very end of that 3 weeks where it's like 3 days left. And then now I'm focused on it. And now I can actually get it done because the pressure's there.
So you're a procrastinator.
Not all times. It's not saying that I'm procrastinating by any means. It's just that there are certain times when, you feel like you're running really well and you're energized to start a task, to see it through. But once you start running out of steam on something, it's just like, you want to keep going, but you kind of know you're doing it half-assed. I think we felt like this on our podcast before in the past. Like we felt like we had to do this. We don't feel like in the mood of doing it. So, we record it, we go through it, and we literally stop and we say, you know what? It wasn't the best that we could do. We can do better.
Yeah.
And probably 85% of the time we go ahead and we release them, even though we're not happy with them.
Yeah.
But it's just, we feel like we can actually get better.
Yeah, we can.
But self-discipline, how do managers look at that? When you have a typical manager, and say I'm me, for example, and you are you, and you have, managers and leaders out there, besides us, that are looking at their staff or the employees at which work for the firm, and they're like, well, you have to be disciplined during the daytime, and you have to be focused. When you have, the reality is, not everybody's focused from 8 to 5.
No. Yeah, that's so individualized. And there's no prescription for how to stay disciplined because everybody functions and works so differently.
It is.
You and I work very differently.
Well, I talk to some of our workers at night sometimes, some of the, folks that work with us that we're, happy to have. And you can tell there's a difference when talking to, say, Phil at 8 o'clock at night when he's working on a project. Sometimes he's much more engaged than what he is at 8 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And it's just how people are. But it's like you have business and you have operating hours between, bookends when you open and when you close. But that's not always the most efficient time for most. And a lot of people just can't stay disciplined during those 8 hours to get stuff done because, quite frankly, they kind of have to rev up to get going and then they have to wind down. And there's really only 3 to 4 hours a day that people are productive, in my opinion.
True.
They're present, but they're not as productive as what they should be.
Yep.
So.
It's a tough one when you have, because some people's, prime hours are in the early evening or even late evening, but you're asking them to be their best between 8 to 5.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's not necessarily easy.
So what do you think businesses can do to kind of hack that? Would you be a proponent or an opponent of having people, pick their hours? Like, as long as they get the work done. Now, depending on the industry, depending on what kind of company you are.
I was going to say it totally depends on the industry and the business needs, and there's so many factors that go into that.
Yeah.
So many factors that go into that. That's not a one-size-fits-all answer.
If I worked in the industry where I could do that, whether it's customer service or, say you're a 24-hour customer service desk like Zappos, for example, if that's even still the case, I'm not sure, but people can kind of pick their shifts a little bit. They're willing to work from 6 p.m. till 2 a.m., for example, because that's when they're the most productive. That's when they can discipline themselves the most, just to focus on work and kind of be the most optimal person of themselves.
Yeah, a lot of other factors play into that too. Family and relationship needs and all kinds of different things. It's not just like my prime brain hour. There's a lot of factors that go into all of that.
No, I definitely agree with you. Self-discipline has always been hard for me. It's, I think the main goal is like you get the work done, you're on time, you're, never late, you're cognizant and you do your best. And no matter when that happens, depending on the job and the career, I think some people have the luxury of making it happen when they want to happen. Some people.
That's very far and few between, though.
Yeah, I think so too.
Unfortunately, but.
Well, I think it's far and few in between sometimes based on the company, but I also think it's sometimes based on the leadership styles of the companies at which are employing the people.
Sure.
Because I think if you're a developer or a programmer or somebody that, just has to get certain tasks done, why does it matter if you show up between 8 and 5? I get teamwork, I get, individuals, but at the end of the day, if you're tasked with doing A, B, C, and D, it's not a big deal. Now, stocking shelves at Walmart after hours, typically do it when no one's there. You do it at night, and the job is from, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Well, and that there's a small percentage of the work population of the businesses who function that way, I guess. And so that's not very common. It's not very common to have a business that you can just kind of work when you want, when it's best for you, and have those. It's just not very common.
No, not at all. I think we could do it with inside of our company if it existed. If we had the mindset of if we were a 24/7 facility and we had to operate around the clock, and we had the luxury of having the staff accordingly to work all hours of the night.
Well, we kind of do, and we kind of are. However, the majority of the businesses that we serve are open from 8 to 5.
Yeah.
So we are kind of forced in a way to working from 8 to 5.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that there can't be one-off positions or one-off projects that are done after hours, or a person might hold that position after hours for very specific reasons. But the majority of the people we serve are open during the day, and so we have to be available during the day.
Yep, I agree with that. I just know it's hard to think for someone to stay self-disciplined, and it's tough to get them focused. So I think that becomes human nature and culture to try to hack that for that individual.
Yeah.
No.
Agree.
Boring question number 2 for the night. Oh boy. You want to hear it?
Sure.
Does self-awareness come with maturity and wisdom, or are you just born with it? I see I actually see the thought bubbles going bloop, bloop, bloop.
I lean more towards A.
So you think self-awareness is a learned behavior?
I think so. Yes.
Boy, we're going to argue.
That doesn't surprise me.
I have no... Let's start with you first.
Okay.
Why do you feel that being self-aware is a learned trait?
Because being self-aware in and of itself takes the awareness, the self-awareness, to recognize that you need to be self-aware. And so it takes intentionality, it takes effort, it takes thought, it takes the ability to reflect and just take a look at your circumstances and the person that you are and who you want to be, and that
I think
that doesn't necessarily. There's a part of it that might come more naturally for some people, but it's still something that has to be developed, and you have to work at it, and you have to be intentional about it.
I think you have to practice at everything in life.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is, do you think self-awareness doesn't exist as something you're born with, or do you feel that it only exists in the matter of, maturity, wisdom, and you understand with what it is? I
think you have to be self-aware enough to know that you need to be self-aware. And I don't think it's something that I don't necessarily think people are born with it or that it comes naturally. Now, people might have a more natural bent to it than others, but it's still something you have to be very intentional about and very self-aware about. That makes any sense. Are you going to argue with me?
I'm throwing up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
Picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
Yes, I am arguing with you. And I'm not arguing. I'm just...
You think you're born with it?
I think you're born with it.
I don't think you are.
I think you are.
Nope.
I think people are destined and born to be, great sports players, like Tom Brady, football. I think he was born with the DNA in order to do that.
Everybody has the ability to be self-aware.
No.
But not
they don't.
Yes, they do.
Not everybody has the ability.
They totally do.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. It's whether or not they recognize
90% of
the need to be self-aware.
90% of the people you deal with are not self-aware.
That doesn't mean they don't have that capability.
Yes, it does. Because if they had the capability, they wouldn't be in the position in which they're in now if they weren't self-aware.
Okay, which is why I go back to why it's a developed trait. It's not necessarily...
So what you're saying is these individuals that are in leadership roles for 10, 15, 20, 30 years have never had the time or the effort or the ability to understand what self-awareness even is?
Apparently not.
But you're not born with it. I think
exactly. So why are we arguing? Because we're just saying you're not necessarily born with it.
I think it
has to be developed.
I think it's like me. If I wanted to be a computer programmer, like a guy that does code all day long, I can try all that I want, but I was not born with the genes in order to allow me to be able to execute on that. I can be aware that coding exists.
But you could be if you wanted to be.
No, I could not.
Yes, you could.
No, I could not.
Yes, you could.
There is no way.
Are you kidding me?
If I wanted to be a surgeon, if I wanted to be a doctor, there has to be something within me to understand, to operate in such a sense to be that person. I think people are born with certain traits.
They are born with certain natural skills. They were born with certain interests. They are born with certain...
So, and let's go back to what I said. Are you born to be or have the gene, the self-awareness gene? And you said no. It's an act of maturity.
Yes, it is. I agree with that.
You can practice all day long at being self-aware. That doesn't mean you're self-aware. You can say...
No, I disagree with that.
You just said it comes from A.
It comes from...
Let's stop, Victoria. Rewind right now. Rewind to the beginning of this conversation where she said A.
You keep going back and forth, too.
No, I don't.
You keep going back and forth,
You said A. People are... self-awareness comes through wisdom and maturity.
I lean more towards A.
And I said, we're going to argue. I disagree with you. It doesn't come from wisdom or maturity. You're born with the trait, whether you're self-aware.
I don't agree with that.
So where do we go from here?
I don't know, dear. Where do we go from here?
Typically, we agree that I'm right, and then we move on.
Not. No, being self-aware takes a lot of intentionality. It takes the willingness to look inside, to look at the issues, look at what's there.
If you're not born with that trait to be able to be self-aware enough to actually do that, you're not going to learn that. Like it's like a basketball player. Pick a basketball player. I'm going to give you a basketball right now for the next and let's go back in time. Let's go back to you were 10 years old and start dribbling a basketball. Do you think you're going to be as good as this star player of the WNBA? Yes or no? No.
That is not the same thing.
You can have a basketball.
It's completely different.
I understand, but you can have a basketball and you can practice as much as you want to practice and do as much as you want to do, but you're not.
And you can get substantially better.
But yes, but you're never going to be at the point where it felt like you were at that position to be a professional basketball player.
Who's to say, how do you measure self-awareness? How do you measure a master of self-awareness? That's not even a thing. So you're not comparing.
You're looking at
comparing whatever. You're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing apples to oranges.
No, you're not.
Yes, you are.
We're gonna have to take this to part 2 or something.
Next week's podcast.
I hear what you're saying, and I raise you.
So self-awareness is all. You will never arrive. You're never going to arrive. But you develop that as you develop any other skill, whether you become an NBA player or whether you make it to the junior high finals.
But people are born with certain traits.
They are
predisposition better.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think I learned my traits over time, or do you think I was born with the natural ability to do something or be who I am?
That depends on what you're referring to.
Anything, pick anything.
IT guy, you develop that over time.
No, I don't believe so.
I do.
I don't believe so.
I do.
I don't.
I 100% do.
I'm not an IT guy.
Oh, what are you then? The way you argue cracks me up.
When I was in 7th grade,
You took a typing class.
I failed.
You
no,
failed.
That was in 9th grade.
You failed your typing class. So talk to me about
Victoria,
your natural
show them
bent.
the report card right here. It's the report card. It's on my Instagram. Grab the report card. It's right there. Yes, I did fail my typing class.
But you develop that skill over time.
But that's not the trait.
What's the trait then?
My trait, what I was born with, is naturally working with other human beings. It doesn't matter what it's in. It could be selling sausage at the sausage factory down in Wilbur, Nebraska.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Or working at
But
wherever.
it's that, even that is something you've developed over time.
You become better at it.
Yes, you develop it over time.
But I started with
just like
with a
self-awareness.
severe advantage of most.
Oh, dear God.
Just by mom and dad having sex at the right time, I had the most clear advantage than most.
Apparently, you need to develop some self-awareness.
I was born with it.
That trait needs developed.
What else is that called?
What? What is what called?
Another word for that. I forget.
I don't know what you're
Cockiness?
referring to. What?
Is it cockiness? No, that's not the word.
That could be a thing.
People say that, but it's not that way.
No. You crack me up.
I just think people have the natural ability to do certain things more than others.
Of course.
You ma'am, I think we're born with the trait of understanding human beings on a deep and emotional level outside most. I don't think...
Okay, there might be an eensy
No,
piece of me, but look at my history. Look at what I've gone through. Look at the schooling I've attended. Look at the classes that I've taken. Look at the books that I've read. Look at the conversations I've had.
But you were still...
I mean, it's a whole plethora of stuff that have contributed to that.
It was, but
I
you
might
were
have
born-
a teeny
you
tiny
were born-
weeny bit of a bent towards it, but I've also developed it over and over and over again, and I will continue to develop it over and over again for the rest of my life.
You were born with that bent towards it.
Okay, we're all born with a bent towards certain things.
Very good. My point entirely. That is my point.
But it doesn't mean
you did not learn to be who you are just through your life's trials and tribulations of what you've been through.
We are saying the same thing in different ways. Yes, we are, because what you just said, you developed it. I've developed it.
But the seed was there. What I am saying is that self-awareness, that seed is not in everybody when they're born. I don't think it's in the large majority thing. I think the way that you reflect on people, that human emotion.
That's what I said. It's developed.
No. I had said, do you believe it's maturity and wisdom, or are you born with it? You're born with something. Now, maturity and wisdom is going to add on to it because you have experience. You have life experience. But I can only hope, no matter what I do, if I lose everything today, I have 3 of the 5 kids that die in a horrific car accident, and my family, everybody's self blows up everywhere. That'd be weird. But if they all did that, I would still not have the ability to reflect on human emotion than like what you do. I could go through the same events that what you went through for your entire life, and I would still be not as connected with myself or how you look at yourself, how you view other people, and how you can internalize and go through emotions with them. You just couldn't. It'd be there, but it'd be different. You're born with that seed. You're born with that purpose of what of who you are, and then you've added to it over the years. But you're born with that piece of it. It's just like a basketball player, a person when they come out of that womb and they're born with something. Well, they end up adding on to that, but they're born with it.
This is a philosophical debate that has gone on for centuries.
Leave Phil out of this.
Nature versus nurture. It's gone on for centuries.
And we're going to end it tonight.
We have the final answers, huh?
Final answer.
That's funny.
But honest to me, I think people are born with certain traits. I think people try to play or pretend that they're good at certain things when they're not. I think there are leaders out there that feel that they're really good leaders when they're not. They're not born with it. And no matter of education, learning, schooling can make them into a better people person. Just can't do it. You can get marginally better, but you're not going to be born with it. You remember back in the day?
I feel like there's always
there's room for improvement all the time.
Yes.
100%. But you have seen natural leaders in this world. You have experienced them. You have been in the same room with them. You have seen them speak. You have seen speeches. You have seen them present. And there's a natural way at which they can come across, at which is like no other. Because they're born with certain traits. They have increased, they have gotten better over time, and they have had more experience, but they have certain traits. I could not be Tony Robbins. No matter how hard I try, I could not be Tony Robbins. If I started over in life at 2 years old and I knew who Tony Robbins was from 46 years ago, I guess, and I said, I'm going to be Tony Robbins when I grow up, I can't.
No.
I can be close, but I cannot be that person because he is born with a certain innate traits that make him who he is. And however he internalizes people, I believe that he's just born with it.
Traits or not, his life could have taken a total different trajectory, and he wouldn't be the Tony Robbins we know today.
No, he would not be.
So we're just, what comes first, the chicken or the egg?
But I think he would be a subset of himself on who he was based on that trait that he had. I read an article today. It was the average person over their lifetime has almost died within like 4 times. Been close to death. And
how do they know this? Where did this come? How do they measure this? How do they?
It was an article.
Is this a scientific thing? Because how does it?
Yeah, it was an article I read, and it was saying that for instance, the other day you were heading up the road and you took a right. Well, maybe if you would have taken a left and gone the other way, there was a major accident down the street there. And we've been in that situation before when we're coming on something and there was an accident, my God, somebody died. And we witnessed that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And we had stopped at a gas station and maybe, the kids or you or whatever, it's like you're 4 minutes late coming out of the bathroom or there's a line or whatever it is. And you're frustrated, but you get in the car and you leave. And if you would have been there 4 minutes earlier, you would have been dead. Mm-hmm. Because that could have been you. It's that the people are within 4 times. I think it's 3 to 4 times in average human life. You come pretty close to dying, but you've avoided it. Why that has anything to do with our podcast, I'm not sure. It's just weird, random Tom facts.
It just cracks me up how they would even measure that or know that scientifically.
People can measure anything anymore.
Yeah.
And that's not off TikTok either. That was off
Yahoo News. Probably.
Well, there was a pop-up somewhere in Yahoo News. It was somewhere in there.
That's funny. Yeah.
So we can agree that we're born with these traits. No, dear.
I think you're always born with a certain set of traits, but whether or not those continue to shape who you are is another story.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I think we're saying the same thing in different ways.
Like we typically do.
Typically.
There you go. Let us know your comments, thoughts, and are you bored with them? Are you not? I don't know. Argue with us.
Obviously, we argue.
There you go.
About the same thing. We're saying the same thing in a different way. It cracks me up.
You always say cracks me up.
You crack me up.
Sorry.
You always crack me up.
All right, everybody. Have a good night and take care and hopefully start put out some more content this week. She has lots of goals to hit. See you guys later. Bye.